This is not a very serious talk. It's meant to be quite light-hearted, so don't read too much into it. I am aware that this is an international audience with the UK, and this is a talk with the UK kind of centric views. So apologies for that, particularly about the lack of ethnic diversity in the samples of autistic talent that I've found. But anyway, moving on. Yes, I am an autistic engineer, but for me, work feels like play. So I've basically been playing for 42 years and they still pay me, so that's really nice. At 63, I still don't want to put the toys away and retire. I work for a neurodiversity and other diversity positive employer, which has made a big difference for me. We have an autism enriched workforce, which means that we have a much higher than expected prevalence of autism, much of which is not diagnosed, and also we benefit from that autism and all it brings. The engineers where I work, like myself, have a passion, a sense of common purpose. We want to make a difference, and I feel we certainly do. As a consequence of all this, I am passionate about autistic employment in STEM. I'll explain what STEM is in a minute. And as a note, all the people referred to in this talk either are or probably were, we can't be sure, autistic, except possibly Albert Einstein's teacher, we just don't know. So I'd like to introduce Porgy and the importance of play. To me, teddy bears are very important, and I know that for many autistic people, they also like plushies. So the Ursus domesticus theodorei, which I think you skipped in the introduction, it translates from Latin as Theodore's domestic bear, otherwise known as teddy bear. Good to know my years spent studying Latin haven't gone to waste. Anyway, so what is STEM? STEM is simply science, technology, engineering, and mathematics. And they're each interconnected. I don't regard them as being completely separate from each other. They're fused together and each relies on the other. So there's many fields in STEM. It's a huge area to explore, and it's a huge area which matches very well with autistic talent. It's a great place to be if you're an autistic person with the right skills. The first person I'd like to introduce is Chris Packham, naturalist, nature photographer, television presenter, and author. And he said, many of us have skills to invent solutions, produce art and science to benefit all. And to receive these gifts, all we need in return is understanding, tolerance, and acceptance. For all autistic people, it's got to be about what we can do. So for me, I feel we should celebrate. This is great, isn't it? Many autistic people are good at STEM and they have a passion for their field, and there's a deep joy in this. I want to introduce 7 autistic people who are very famous and have made huge contributions in their area, but I don't want anybody to feel outclassed or that they can't make their own contribution or participate. The first one is my hero, and that is Alan Turing. I rely on his work as the foundation of my entire career. So some fun facts about Turing. He was an Olympic level runner who tried out for the Olympic team after the war. He was known for being eccentric, like riding his bike to work with a gas mask on to treat his hay fever. Turing created the first computer chess program, but there were no computers to try it on at the time. And the Turing test, which he devised in 1950, is still used to measure artificial intelligence. And in fact, you know those irritating captchas that you have to prove that you're human? The T in captcha is actually Turing. Now, an interesting part of Turing's life is Porgy. This is Porgy. Bletchley Park in Buckinghamshire, UK is a stately home famous for the code-breaking activities that took place there in the Second World War. However, in the middle of the displays documenting the important activities that took place at Bletchley Park sits a quite unassuming teddy bear. This teddy bear is Porgy, a long-nosed, glass-eyed brown bear owned by Alan Turing, the man who cracked the Enigma code and whose work in mathematics was fundamental in the development of the computer. Contrary to what you might think, Porgy was not a childhood toy. Instead, Turing purchased the teddy bear for himself when he was a student and professor at Cambridge University, and he would sit Porgy in a chair while he practiced his lectures in front of him. Porgy resides in a glass case, looking resplendent in a black and white and blue dungarees adorned with red buttons made by Turing's sister-in-law Beryl. Alan Turing was a remarkable man. His most famous work, cracking the Enigma code, is said to have changed the course of the war and is estimated to have saved as many as 2 million lives, whilst his work in mathematics underpinned the development of the world's first computers and laid the groundwork for the development of artificial intelligence. Turing's work at Bletchley Park remained top secret until the mid-70s. So confidential was his work that even his family were unaware of his contribution to the war effort until long after his death, when they received a government letter detailing the impact of his work. In recognition of his immense contribution to computer science, artificial intelligence, and Britain's war effort, Turing's image now features on the UK's £50 notes, whilst in Bletchley Park, Porgy the teddy bear also serves as a reminder of this remarkable man whose life continues to shape the world we live in today. Yes, Alan Turing's work was pivotal and foundational. He's probably most famous for the code breaking, which obviously at the time he wasn't. But the code breaking actually spans a much larger time period than the Second World War. This picture is a picture of me in the National Memorial Arboretum, stood next to a memorial for the people who worked in signals intelligence. And if we zoom in on the plaque, it says, to commemorate all British and Allied personnel whose work with signals intelligence and communication security has supported HMG, that's His or Her Majesty's government, in war and peace since 1914. That's a period of over 110 years, and this work is still ongoing. It's absolutely vital work. So that's Alan Turing, and we'll hear from him again soon. Moving on to a household name, Albert Einstein. We all know about Albert Einstein, absolutely brilliant man. Quantum physics and relativity, of course. Albert Einstein wrote to President Franklin D. Roosevelt on August 2nd, 1939. The letter warned Roosevelt that the Nazis were developing an atomic bomb and suggested that the United States start its own atomic program. Albert Einstein didn't like wearing socks, but there was more to it than simple nonconformity. He once asked a reporter, "Why is it that nobody understands me, but everybody likes me?" Looking at his complicated relationship with socks and shoes, tell us something about what it was like to be Albert Einstein in an everyday way. My next famous person is Charles Darwin. Charles Darwin's 5-year voyage on the HMS Beagle is one of the most famous scientific expeditions in history. In 1831, Darwin set sail on the HMS Beagle, the ship's naturalist. He spent 5 years traveling to lots of destinations in South America, the Pacific Islands, and Australia. During the voyage, he collected specimens and made observations that would later form the basis of his theory of evolution. Darwin's observations of different species he encountered on the voyage led him to develop his theory of natural selection. Darwin's voyage on the HMS Beagle was an important moment in scientific history as it provided the necessary evidence to support the theory of evolution. My next person is another heavyweight, Sir Isaac Newton. Fun fact, Newton's birthday is commonly celebrated as January 4th, 1643, but he was actually born on December the 25th, 1642. This is because England was using the Julian calendar at the time, which differs from the Gregorian calendar used today. So that's confusing. Another fact, a lab fire destroyed 20 years of Newton's research, which I think is very sad. And we're going to see a repeat of that kind of event in a minute. Newton designed and built the first reflecting telescope in 1668. The telescope used a mirror to create clear images without color distortion. Obviously, much more to talk about Sir Isaac Newton, but I simply haven't got time, and we'll move on. My next autism hero in STEM is Maria Salomia Sklodowski-Curie. Apologies for that. Known simply as Marie Curie, was a Polish and naturalized French physicist and chemist who conducted pioneering research on radioactivity. She was the first woman to win a Nobel Prize, the first person to win a Nobel Prize twice, and the only person to win a Nobel Prize in 2 scientific fields. Her husband, Pierre Curie, was a co-winner of her first Nobel Prize, making them the first married couple to win the Nobel Prize and launching the Curie family legacy of 5 Nobel Prizes. She was, in 1906, the first woman to become a professor at the University of Paris. Curie died in 1934 from aplastic anemia, a condition caused by years of exposure to radiation. And in fact, her papers and other possessions are still radioactive and require special handling. So we'll be hearing from Marie Curie shortly. My next STEM hero, autistic STEM hero, is Nikola Tesla. He was born in Croatia, which was at the time was part of the Austro-Hungarian Empire in 1856. Fun facts, Tesla was known to be extremely fond of pigeons. He even fell in love with one, writing, "I loved that pigeon as a man loved a woman, and she loved me. As long as I had her, there was purpose to my life." Tesla had an obsessive personality and was fixated on the number 3. Tesla claimed he invented a death ray called the Teleforce. Tesla spoke 8 languages: Serbian, English, Czech, German, French, Hungarian, Italian, and Latin. And then my last autism hero in STEM is so well known to us, she needs no introduction. This is Temple Grandin. She was featured in Time 100 magazine in 2010. She was included in Time magazine's list of the 100 most influential people in the world. Her inclusion in the Time 100 magazine reflects her significant contributions to both animal science and autism awareness. Temple also developed the HUD machine, so she invented a machine, also known as a squeeze machine, which applies deep pressure to the body to provide a calming effect for people who find such stimulation beneficial. After going through speech therapy and finally being diagnosed with autism, she was wrongly diagnosed with schizophrenia and brain damage. She started speaking at age 4, and her high intellectual abilities received dedicated support. She attended several private schools and was once expelled after she threw a book at another student. However, a teacher noticed her IQ score, estimated to be around 130. So anyway, well known to us. I quite just discovered this book, Calling All Minds. It's written for children, and I quite fancy ordering that, so that's quite interesting. Anyway, moving on, we now summarize our list of autistic talent. Those 7, don't feel intimidated by those people. They are great, but we can all make our contribution. So if we look at these people and take quotes from them, famous quotes from them, what will we find, and how would we sort those into categories? Well, I did, and I found 6 categories. But if you look deeper, you may well find others. So the first category I found was curiosity. Albert Einstein said, "I have no special talents, I am only passionately curious." Marie Curie said, "Be less curious about people and more curious about ideas." And she also said, "If I see anything vital around me, it is precisely that spirit of adventure which seems indestructible and is akin to curiosity." Isaac Newton said, "I know not how I seem to others, but to myself I am but a small child wandering upon the vast shores of knowledge, every now and then finding a small, bright pebble to content myself with, while the vast ocean of undiscovered truth lay before me." And my hero, Alan Turing, said, "Codes are a puzzle, a game just like any other game. And what does a game do? It challenges you to solve it. A puzzle challenges you to solve it, engages your curiosity." For me, my biggest area or strength would be pattern thinking, and I think that's true of a lot of autistic people, particularly in STEM. I think the greatest pattern thinker potentially was Charles Darwin, and he said, "My mind seems to have become a kind of machine for grinding general laws out of large collections of facts." What an amazing example of pattern thinking, going out, observing the natural world, spotting all the patterns and working out evolution. Incredible, absolutely incredible. Nikola Tesla, the inventor, prodigious inventor, said, "There is no subject more captivating, more worthy of study than nature. To understand this great mechanism, to discover the forces which are active and the laws which govern them, is the highest aim of the intellect of man." And Temple Grandin said, "You take a bunch of data about something you don't know about, and you find patterns to sort them into categories. And perhaps that's kind of hints at data science, what we call data science, or even artificial intelligence nowadays. And Marie Curie, she said, I am among those who think that science has great beauty. And I agree with that. And some of what I do is finding patterns in data and working out how to shape it in a beautiful way. Next characteristic is perseverance. Some people say we are stubborn. I say we persevere. Isaac Newton said, my powers are ordinary. Only my application brings me success. Albert Einstein, so humble in some ways. It is not that I'm so smart, but I stay with questions much longer. And Temple Grandin says, my advice is you always have to keep persevering. Marie Curie, we must have perseverance and above all confidence in ourselves. Confidence is very important. We must believe that we are gifted for something and that this thing must be attained. And again, she says, one never notices what has been done. One can only see what remains to be done, which is echoed by Alan Turing. He says, we can only see a short distance ahead, but we can see plenty there that needs to be done. You need to keep going. Another great strength I think autistic people have is independent thought. Charles Darwin said, I am not apt to follow blindly the lead of other men. Nikola Tesla, be alone, that is the secret of invention. That is when ideas are born. Now, Albert Einstein's teacher, possibly neurotypical, but speaking about Albert Einstein, said, you are a smart boy, Einstein, very smart, but you have one great fault. You do not allow yourself to be told anything. He checks everything out and he thinks his own thoughts, which I think is a great strength, even if it's a bit frustrating for his teacher. Now, the next slide is basically the outtakes and bloopers, which I kind of nearly left out, and that's descent. So Isaac Newton says, I can calculate the motion of heavenly bodies, but not the madness of people. And Charles Darwin said, I have tried lately to read Shakespeare and found it so intolerably dull that it nauseated me. Now, I do understand that some people think that Shakespeare needs to be seen on stage, and I get that. But anyway, this is Charles Darwin dissenting. And then Albert Einstein said, two things are infinite, the universe and human stupidity. And I'm not sure about the universe. It's quite humorous. Another aspect is creativity. And I know that so many of us enjoy creating things in whatever field. Albert Einstein says creativity is intelligence having fun, which echoes back to my view that it's the work I do is essentially play. Intelligent play, but play nonetheless. Nikola Tesla, I don't think there is any deeper fulfillment that can capture a human heart than the feeling of an inventor seeing his ideas materialized. Such feelings make a man forget food, sleep, friends, love, everything. A passionate inventor. So these then are the passionate characteristics, 6 of them. But if you look at the quotes and explore online, you may well find several others. But to my mind, these are characteristics that, as an autistic person, and my experience with other autistic people and autistic culture, these are very strong in autism. And I think that's why we see such a good match between autism and science, technology, engineering, mathematics. So my own personal experience is that I have a passion for computing. It has a strong feeling of play. For me, computing is absolutely fascinating, watching the detail of what's going on in the computer. For me, it's mathematics in motion or data choreography. The data dances. And it's a game where I get to write the rules. I change a line of code and the rules change and the game changes. So this is how I experience engineering and why I like it. Discover something new every day. It's a challenge, figuring how to do something new better, why it doesn't work, how to make it work, can we make it work better? And that works in a spiral of intrinsic motivation, which works in a spiral upwards and upwards. And that's why we have such a rich vein of autistic talent in engineering and in STEM. When I was diagnosed, I I had the opportunity to do outreach at Southlands Special School, teaching once a fortnight computer engineering to 3 students who were absolutely brilliant. All I really needed to give them was a safe environment, a little bit of guidance, and permission to learn, and they did the rest themselves. So two of the outcomes: one student went on to study web design in evening classes, and another student became the youngest ever to pass a university Cisco networking course. Probably one of the most enthusiastic engineers I know is Guy Martin. May not be known outside the UK. He's a TV personality. He's just got such passion. And he says, I'm addicted to work. I'm always looking for a new challenge, but sometimes the challenges seem to find me. And Martin had shown an interest in working on trucks as early as age 12. This is, by the way, this is a Rolls-Royce Merlin engine out of a Spitfire or a Lancaster. He owns that, and he tested it in a garage one time and managed to fly it into the wall. Anyway, as a child, he was fascinated by engines and would take apart lawnmowers to try to make them go faster. So that's kind of the background of enthusiasm, all the motivators for engineering. How could you take some steps into engineering? Well, we take a cue from Guy Martin here, reverse engineering, which you could take something apart to find out how it works. Before throwing out a broken gadget, why not take it apart and see how it works? You might learn something, you might be able to salvage some bits, you might even be able to fix it, but obviously safety first. And then there's the right to repair movements in the US and apparently in the EU and also in the UK, maybe elsewhere. Devices must be made in a way that allows owners to repair them. So we need to stop gluing our phones together, for example. Another thing you can do is repurposing. This is something I made for my wife. She wanted a bench for the garden, and it uses repurposed parts. There's a cabin bed underneath there, upside down. There's legs sticking up there. There's bits of a log cabin, and there's old trellis off the fence. Unfortunately, she repurposed it to stick some pot plants on. She never sat on it, but there you go. Another fun project that I made is an aircraft tracker. This is a photo of it tracking aircraft in my area, and a close-up of an aircraft landing. It works through ADS-B where aircraft transmit their positions, and I have a receiver, and I can display that. The parts of the aircraft tracker are a Raspberry Pi, a USB stick that does the reception, an aerial, and an aerial amplifier. So that's just an example of a little home engineering project that you might be able to do if you wanted to. You download the software from Flight Radar 24. So finishing up, and I am finishing, I'd like to say this: you do you. Whatever field you're in, how you find yourself, just start having fun, okay? And this is a quote from Alan Turing. Sometimes it is the people no one can imagine anything of who do the things that no one can imagine. I've got a little epilogue. I was playing with AI, Gemini AI. First time I've actually played with AI, in fact. And I asked it to write a poem about an autistic teddy bear who likes to program computers called Barnabear. And it came up with this, which I'll read out and finish with. In a world of fluff and gentle hues lived Barnabear, a teddy, it's true, with button eyes and stitched-on smile and a mind that worked in a special style. Barnabear was autistic, you see, his world a puzzle, uniquely. Sometimes the noise it stung his ears, sometimes the lights brought on the tears. But Barnabear had a special place, a world of logic, time and space, his coding corner neat and bright, where screens glowed softly in the night. He loved the rhythm, clickety-clack, of tiny fingers on the track, building programs line by line, a digital world so perfectly fine. Some might not understand his way, his flapping hands, or what he'd say. But in his code, his heart took flight, a brilliant star burning ever so bright. So if you meet Barnabear one day, don't be afraid. Just come and play. He might not speak in words you know, but his code will surely help you grow. For Barnabear, the coding bear, shows the world that love and care and a mind that's wired in a special way can build bright futures every day. And I'll finish there. Thank you.